late 1960s was the creation of exactly what would certainly be among one of the highly fierce plus ruthless African American street organization in the history of Los Angeles. The Crips started with the production of a local street gang called the Baby Avenues by South Central, Los Angeles high school pupils, Raymond Washington and Stanley Tookie Williams. The two eventually started calling their gang the Cribs, which is believed to have at some point evolved into the present label of the South Central gang, the Crips. Raymond and Tookie claim to have created this specific gang as a way to defend themselves against rival gangs in the neighborhood whom were committing numerous criminal offenses. Crips Foundation. The Crips started on high school campuses across South Central, Los Angeles. Fremont High School was the home for the East Side Crips, and the West Side Crips started on the opposite side of the 110 Harbor Freeway. On top of that, an additional faction of Crips was developed in the Compton jurisdiction of Los Angeles, which is known today as the Compton Crips. Almost a decade after the establishment of this specific gang, the Crips had expanded from a miniature Los Angeles gang to a cross-country organization with membership spreading throughout the state of California. Also formally developed gangs, such as the Main Street Crips, Kitchen Crips, Five Deuce Crips, and the Rolling 20 Crips, combined the Crip label into their gang set. Regardless of the fact that these gangs welcomed the Crip name, they typically continued to be independent and remained to have their own leadership structure and affiliates. Several of these Crip subsets often found themselves in conflict with each other as a result of non-affiliation with Deuces and Treys. Therefore, the Crips had actually ended up being similar to the gang affiliates they had once formed to protect themselves from Crips evolved into gangbangers who petrified their very own communities. Throughout their early years of existence, Crips' primary activities consisted of extortion of funds from everyday working African Americans, burglary and assault. The fathers of the Crips gang both lost their connection with the gang many years after its creations. A rival gang killed Raymond Washington in 1979, and Tookie was behind bars that very same year on multiple counts of murder. Bloods Foundation. The Bloods was started on Piru Street in the Compton, California. Sylvester Scott and Vincent Owens were the creators of the Bloods, and this particular gang really in fact started as the Compton Pirates. Rapid growth of the Bloods was helped by an intense dispute between the Compton Crips and the Compton Pirates, in which the Pirates were significantly outnumbered and brutally beating. This conflict delivered a number of sets of the Pirates with each other, and the Pirates combined forces pressures with the Lords Park Hustlers and the LA Brims. As a matter of fact, the Brims were very impassioned to combine forces against the Crips, who had not too long ago killed a member of their gang. Numerous gangs around the neighborhood who had been assaulted or outnumbered in the past by the Crips were also excited to team against them, and these gangs were united under the Blood name. Red gangs in the Compton called themselves Pirates, and a number of other red gangs in the area such as the Brims, Bounty Hunters, Swans, and the Family are also called the Bloods. Those connected with the Bloods are relatively well recognized for their take-no-prisoners mindset along with their relentless and unforgiving attitude. Initiation and sets. Throughout the latter half of the 1970s, the Crips and the Bloods started to split up into smaller sets. Throughout the Los Angeles location, they started to claim particular areas as their gang territory. Their gang enemies ended up being ferocious and bloody. Nearly 30,000 gang affiliates connected with either the Crips or Bloods made their residence around Los Angeles throughout the early 1980s. Gang participants varied in ages from as young as 13 to as old as 33, and they were required to carry out specific acts in order to obtain initiation into these gangs. Future affiliates of either the Bloods or Crips were expected to be jumped in or counted in where they fight established members of the gang which they desired to be recruited in. These future participants would additionally be asked to be devoted to a life of crime in a specific neighborhood or assault a member of a rival gang. Crips identification. The Bloods and the Crips were very territorial and fairly devoted in terms of protecting their turf against intrusion by another rival gangs. As a result of the multitude of gang members occupying a fairly small location of Los Angeles, the gangs formulated a technique of recognizing each other. This system of recognition allowed gang affiliates to prevent attacking members of various sets that belong to the same gang. The Crips recognize themselves with the color blue, which is thought to come from the colors of Washington High School in South Los Angeles. Crip gangsters wear articles of blue apparel, blue bandanas, shoelaces, hair rollers, belts, hats, or sweatshirts. If one's apparel is unclear, gang signs are commonly used, which is a derivative of sign language for these gangs. Crip members are likely to change the letter B with the letter C when composing particular words. Therefore, back ends up becoming cack, being ends up becoming saying, example kissing cack, saying cool. When talking to each other, Crips refer to each other as cuz and blood killers, BK, and affiliates of this gang could be seen sporting British Knight, BK, shoes. Bloods identification. The Bloods, comparison to the Crips, recognize themselves with the color red, which is Centennial High School color where the Bloods come from, and unlike the Crips, the Bloods could be seen sporting red apparel such as red bandanas or rags. An additional color might be used in regard to the name of the set, such as green for the Lime Hood Pirates. Affiliates of the Blood gangs greet each other in a number of ways such as blood, yo blood, and use up blood. Bloods also cross out the letter C as an indication of disrespect for the Crips, and on top of that, the Bloods will decorate walls and residential property with graffiti which is rude towards the Crips. Blood members are likely to change the letter C with the letter B when composing particular words. Therefore, coffee ends up being boffy, Compton ends up being Bompton, and cool ends up being bool. When talking to each other, Bloods refer to each other as Crip killers, CK. The drug trade. Before the 1980s, the Crips and the Bloods had little involvement in narcotics trafficking. Nonetheless, by 1983, African American Los Angeles gangs took advantage of drug market after the easy accessibility of narcotics, especially crack, as a way of earnings. Several of the gang affairs who became engaged in the purchasing and selling of drugs originated from the inner city areas where unemployment and poverty are a way of life. Gangsters could possibly make anywhere from $500 to $5,000 each day dealing crack cocaine. Therefore, the cash reward was a primary part which attracted gangsters to this specific profession. Bloods and Crips manage crack cocaine distribution in several cities around the nation. Affiliates of these gangs will expand to various cities, ascertain the narcotics demand in that city, recognize the drug dealers in the city, and determine the established operations for narcotic sales. Gang participation in the drug market has resulted in an unbelievable amount of brutality throughout specific cities as a result of the members battling over lucrative drug trade. So, as members of the Bloods and Crips populated in different cities throughout the United States, they brought with them the sale of narcotics and the violence connected with it. Gang members frequently travel to other cities based on established family connections within a certain city and the temptation of fast money from the purchasing and selling of drugs. Alliance and influence. The Crips and the Bloods are seen in the majority of states and their jail populations. There are essentially hundreds of sets or individual gangs under the primary Blood and Crip name. East Coast-based gangs consisting of People Nation and Folk Nation has become so popular that the Crips and the Bloods have developed allies with them. Bloods have developed an alliance with the People Nation, and the Crips have developed an alliance with the Folk Nation. The Bloods and the Crips started over 20 years ago in a little area of Los Angeles, and today, there are more than 33 states and 123 cities which are occupied by Crips and Bloods gang members. New York City is among one of the biggest cities in the United States, flooded with Bloods and Crips.